Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to retcon a little and move forward a little with Phantasm III, Lord of the Dead, released in 1994. Let's get to it. We open on the requisite narration and recaps to bring us up to speed. They take us through the first film and then bookend the second, being curiously cautious not to show Mikey's face. This leads right into our current story, which picks up where that one left off. The hearse explodes and we find Mike is back. Again, and we've tied off the pesky Liz storyline in style. In other new developments, Reggie has also lost all hesitation around firing off the old quad barrel. That's some good blasting. Surrounded, Reggie takes a risky gambit, threatening to blow them all to smithereens. Since the tall man delights in taking young men whole, he backs off, for now, retreating to his smoking lounge, where he plots his next attack on Inspector Gadget. We then find Mike in the hospital in a coma. He heads toward the light where he meets Jody, who confirms you age in the afterlife. Still incapable of following Jody's recommendations, he heads directly toward the light until he sees a silhouette of the tall man, snapping him back into consciousness. He finds that he was scheduled for some elective surgery by this hag nurse and manages to stick her. She then squirts all over Reggie before birthing an orb from her head. Lucky for the boys, this is just a peeping orb, so it does its business and carries on. They then go to stock up for the journey at a house that probably shouldn't exist given the prior storylines. Jody makes a brief appearance, but we find out his powers are limited to no more than the plot requires at any given moment, and he turns into an orb before warning them away just as the tall man shows up. They each fail to repel him and he nonchalantly retreats with his new boy toy. Reggie wakes up and gets back to searching just like before, arriving in Holtzville before long. He stops at Barth's, a must-visit for anyone passing through. He comes across some strangers who get the drop on him and goes for a nice ride until they find an enticing home to loot. They enter and soon find themselves in a booby-trapped hellhole run by this slippery scamp. They fail to take him seriously due to his Lilliputian stature, so he demonstrates that he's not playing games. Outside, he confirms his familiarity with late-night Cinemax as he delivers Rufus a hard ticket to Hawaii, and then stares down the final scavenger trapped in his tiger pit before putting one between his eyes and releasing Reggie. They spend a little time giving the scumbags a proper burial and marking, assuring this budding psychopath always has a crime scene to revisit in moments of weakness. That night, Tim and Reggie sit around a crackling fire and share stories of the tall man. The next morning, the scavenger's car and bodies are conspicuously missing. Tim demonstrates his value as a compatriot and convinces Reggie to bring him along. They start at the Holtzville funeral home where Reggie goes in alone and gets bushwhacked. He tries to convey the clear and present danger, but the message doesn't land. Until it does. And Tanisha finds herself unencumbered by the burden of containing blood. Rocky whips out her nunchakus and takes her best shot. However, before finishing the job, Tim strolls in looking like he's going to a costume party dressed as 1994 and solidifies his value to the group. They then drive on until they reach an impasse. Tim reveals that the Jode orb is capable of providing rudimentary directions, leading them to a point where they pick up Rocky? Somehow? Anyway, finding nothing but a rural wasteland ahead of her, she agrees to come with them. The next day, they're once again losing their way until they run across an abundance of evidence that they're near the tall man, bringing them to Bolton. They set up camp outside of town, and Jodorb visits Reggie in his dreams where he makes love fully clothed. He takes him to see the tall man who is working on getting Michael to voluntarily give up his brain for orbification. When the opportunity arises, they grab Michael and flee. This reveals a connection between dreams and waking life when Reggie wakes up with Jody and Mike at their camp. The tall man is locked in on their energy now, requiring Reggie to do that doorway collapsing thing he does so well. The tall man only gets a brief peekaboo of his bulge before getting shut down. His hands stick around though and get handsy, causing a minor amount of trouble before being handled in turn. They drive into the night, eventually discovering what happened to the scavengers' bodies and car. They have a bit of a back and forth before Rufus displays turd-like driving behavior. The altercation has also blown the Cuda's rear tires, so they decide to walk to the nearby mortuary, figuring they wouldn't be expected to go there, so it's safe to hide. They scope things out to make sure they're alone, and they appear to be, although there is a suspiciously active cryo chamber in the basement, which gives Mike the recollection that the tall man hates the cold. Thanks for telling us now. They hunker down for the night and take shifts on lookout. Mike attempts to download knowledge from Jody, who tells him what we already know: brains to orbs, bodies to slaves, and that this is related to some sort of plan for conquest. The scavengers show back up and grab Tim while Rocky gets to chuckin'. Meanwhile, Jody and Mike check in on the tall man, who senses their presence, and when Mike poops himself, he locks in and arrives. He then immediately begins whatever he had planned for both Tim and Mike. Elsewhere, Rocky confronts Edna, beginning with breaking Reggie's face, and then focusing on punching and scissoring her over the edge. Tim is released when Jody gets a surge of power, and the tall man doesn't notice because he's distracted by his hobby lobotomy kit, because it's important to foster new interests. Jody puts in work, spinning off Rufus's head, and then Reggie gives Henry a quad barrel to the face. They bust in and put a nitroglycerin-tipped spear into the tall man, driving him into the freeze box, but his inner orb escapes, as if they don't have enough to deal with this dumb bitch. Oh! Fair enough. Mike takes a moment to explore his body and has trouble getting his face flap to look right. The rest of them handle the final orb with a plunger and a dip in the cryo chamber. Cursed with golden eyes, Mike runs off with Jody. Rocky goes her own way, and Reggie and Tim return to the mortuary to search for clues. Hey, found a couple there. And Big Don, apparently confident in one day finishing his story, ends the movie on a cliffhanger. Hey, good for you. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.